Hello everyone, welcome back. Just to make double sure, triple check, double check, quadruple check. I did this whole thing without recording it, so this is the second time I'm going through this. Just gotta push record, you can't be stupid. Like, well, you have to do record with two different systems. But anyway, that's besides the point. I pushed one for one system, not for the other. So here we go. That's no fault of your own. Shut up, get to the video. So, welcome back. Mr. Minority coming to you with another video, of course. This one's another Heroscape ranking video. This time we're doing Wave 1, Malliddon's Prophecy. So there was smaller waves that came out in between larger waves. So these ones were kind of like nice little boxes that you could get multiples of because this introduced common squads. Many armies, especially quite meta armies, would have multiples of the same common squad. So that's something that was, again, quite well suited to the smaller package format. So you didn't have to spend, $40 for multiple master sets, etc., etc. Of course, nowadays it'd probably be 100 plus, whatever. We'll see. So let's get started. Aerogruts. Okay. So Aerogruts, I'm going to put them in the C tier. Now, this is a little bit lower than I want to put them, to be honest with you, because I like the aesthetic. Okay, I like kind of the orcs. I like particularly Heroscape's kind of aesthetic take on the orcs. But, again, I'm trying to do it relative to other Heroscape stuff, and Heroscape, in my opinion, has some pretty darn good creative designs, and so, I've got to rank them a little bit lower, and then taking also into account their viability. Now, again, when I was younger, used to do huge, massive battles. So if you have huge, massive battles, firepower coming from all across the battlefield, these guys are going to have a difficult time shining. Now, their beast spawning is really good. You have two pretty strong options in the base game. You have Krug, and you have Mimring. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think those are the two ones. And so that's pretty good, and that's pretty much where all their points are, because their attack and their defense are one. They're not going to live, and they have disengagement, especially for range. Unless someone flies up to you and just, whatever. So pretty much all their points are invested in that bonding. In terms of, again, their stats, they're not going to really be doing much. Now, if they have high advantage, 2 attack, multiple attacks, okay, whatever. But in my opinion, I think they're maybe a little overpriced, even at that 40-point range. Again, smaller armies, maybe so, but in big battles, they're completely worthless besides their bonding. So, speaking of worthless, we like to call it worthless to the end, but I like their aesthetic a little bit more because they're armored. We're going to go with the Blade Gruts. Blade Gruts. Okay, so the Blade Gruts are kind of similar to their Aerogrut counterparts in terms of their viability on the field. There isn't much. They got 2 attack, 2 defense. They're not going to be doing much. They're not going to be defending against much. They're not going to be getting through any defense anytime soon. But I kind of like the aesthetic, again, with the armor. And then, of course, they have the disengage. A little bit more useful for them because they'll be, up close and personal with that one range. But they have Orc Champion bonding, which they have a lot. You have a lot more choices with that one, or more choices, I should say. For instance, Ornak. We'll get to him when we get to the Flag Bearers. Which, by the way, I have no idea if I'm pronouncing any of these names correct. I could be way off. Probably am way off on at least a few of them. And so it's decently viable with that bonding right there. But other than that, again, they're not really going to be doing a whole lot. So we'll put them in the seats here. But I do like their aesthetic a little bit more than the Aerogruts because of the armor. And yeah, here we go. Kelda. So I'm going to put Kelda in the B tier, which is a little bit of a disappointment. I like Kiri a lot. I'm not really that enamored by her design. Again, Heroscape isn't like 40k. There's a lot more detail in 40k. There's not quite as much detail in Heroscape. I'm fine with that. When the AOA Age of Annihilation figures came out and they showed all their detail, I was like, wow, that's a lot of detail. And I would be honest with you, happy with even a little less detail than that. So long as there's a good amount of detail, but it doesn't have to be super detailed, I'm good with that. So maybe it's a lack of detail on Kelda, especially facial features. She looked, my sculpt looked a little weird. My Krug actually, even though he's much bigger, looked pretty different from the packaging. He's a lot darker and more menacing. In fact, actually, he is back there. I'll have to show you. And maybe that's what normal Krugs look like, but he looks a lot different than the imaging. Anyway, Kelda is the healer with a capital T. Okay, Sonlin, you know, it can heal. Excuse me. There aren't a lot of characters who heal. Excuse me. I need a healer right now. And yeah, she is the healer. Now, obviously, she can't betray. It's pretty unlikely, so it would seem. Maybe with some confirmation bias, it seems like it's, you know, a little bit more likely than it should be. But she is pretty viable, especially with the 80 points. Now, again, big battle format, all in. You know, she's all over the battlefield. She can't heal fast enough. But I could tell in the more competitive format, she probably wouldn't be quite as useful because a lot of the more competitive, the more meta teams are going to be using common squads or squads. And, you know, you can't heal them, at least right now. Age of Annihilation introduced, you know, multi-health squads, but up until now, all squads have one life, so Keldo's not going to really do anything. It's not going to do anything at all, in fact, with those squads. Unless you want to try to kill them, which is, you know, is a strategy. You go up to an enemy squad and you try to kill it. Or maybe if it's, I can't remember if it's friendly. I think it's not. Anyway, these army cards are too small for me to see here. I'm doing this all by memory. Which is, I probably shouldn't. Anyway. Homework. Not a super big fan of her aesthetic though, because again, facial features. Can't really see what's going on there. She is decent though. I still like her as a sculpt. I just think, comparatively speaking, could have been, you know, more, maybe more regal is the term, you know, because you're healing. You know, that's such a powerful, rare thing in Heroscape. So, but I still like her. Okay, Marcus. I'm gonna put him right down here. Marcus Decimus Gallus again. Could be butchering that. I like the Greco-Roman aesthetic. I'm not a big fan of Marcus. I'm going to put him here just to keep him kind of on par with the Romans. I'm going to rate later, just, you know, spoiler alert. But I probably feel like he probably should be C tier. You know what? I'm going to put him C tier. You know, pretty mediocre stats, especially on paper. Not really someone I ever consider. He really gets lost in the mix. He's so average, so mediocre in terms of what he does. Unless you're going for a certain, you know, like Roman or whatever human champion bonding build. But there's lots of other better human champions out there. Then we're going just for the aesthetic. Then okay, you know, we have old Romans or whatever. I'm not a huge fan of him. And it says aesthetic, to be honest with you, is a little lackluster for Roman, but I like the Roman aesthetics. That's why originally I placed them up in the B tier. Omicron Snipers were going up with EA. I really like them. I like their ability. I like their aesthetic. I like how they're kind of, you know, contrasting with the dark Utgar Solborgs. These ones are more humanoid looking, and they're very bright colors, you know, to indicate kind of, you know, the good versus evil trope. Whereas the you know, Deathwalkers are generally speaking a lot more machine looking. So not a whole lot else to say about them. But they, again, a good ability with a deadly shot, probably gonna get high advantage. Although they have one pitiful attack, they're more than likely most of the time going to have two. And it's also interesting that their gun counts as a, you know, a hit box. Anyway, just a little bit of a side note, but they're up there. I like them quite a bit. I like most Solborgs, and they are no exception. So these, I'm going to place them down here with good old Marcus. In my previous video, I put them in B tier because, again, I like the Greco-Roman aesthetic. But they're not. I'm not a huge fan, relatively speaking, of what they could have, relative to what they could have been. I think there's still more that can be explored within that faction. These in particular, the Roman archers, they are in a big battle scenario more or less borderline worthless. because all you have to do is knock one of them out and their ability becomes worthless. Now their ability is pretty decent. If you can position them, that's the key. Position them, because they all have to be on the same level. And then they will probably get off one good attack, because they have one pitiful measly defense. If they attack them, they're going to basically, if you attack them, you're going to take them off the board, basically. So yeah, I would say in terms of that one attack, it's pretty decent, but it's probably going to be one attack. Other than that, they have 2 attack, so again, if they have high advantage, 3 attack, okay, multiple times if there's at least 2 of them, okay, it's not awful, you'll probably do something, but just generally speaking, there's a lot better ways you could invest your points, even in a smaller battle, I imagine, 400-point match, etc. So yeah, rather lackluster. I wonder if I'm going to put anyone in the D tier throughout my entire videos. I'll have to see about that. Roman Legionnaires are going to put as a sole kind of representative in the B tier. Though, again, in terms of viability, they're like the Viking Warriors, the Tarn Viking Warriors. They don't have a whole lot going for them. They do have the human champion bonding, which is nice, I believe. Can't see that. And then their defense, the shield, extra shield defense, that's nice. And then they have the 3 attack, which is, for a squad, especially with 4 of them, it's like, okay, well, you could potentially have up to, quadruple attack. So quadruple attack with 3 defenses, like, with 3 dice is like, okay. Yeah. So again, not great, but, you can potentially, do some solid stuff with that. But again, I like the Roman aesthetic. These ones I like a little bit more. I remember, just kind of personal or more anecdotal, I should say. Some figures survive the test of time a little bit better than others. Of course, it depends on how you store them. But these ones, and the Roman archers especially in particular, they had a lot of issues with like standing up and coming off their base. So there was a lot of Gorilla Glue involved with these figures. So anyway, so line of sight and all that good stuff was tricky sometimes because they'd be leaning or whatever. So anyway, speaking of line of sight, we're gonna go put Taylord in the A tier. Speaking of line of sight, when I was younger, we were pretty religious and we had no tolerance for demon-like looking things. I even think my dad in particular, like usually he just kind of gives a blank statement, but I think he actually saw this one in particular and said to get rid of it. So we threw it out, unfortunately, and we used a glyph or a figure, depending on what it was, to stand in for him. So again, line of sight was a little bit of a tougher one, a hitbox of like, okay, can I see him, can I not see him sort of thing, but he's a medium 5, so it's not like he's a super difficult figure to try to gauge, if you can see or not. Remedied that a year, 2 ago, got me a Taylord. Beautiful sculpt. I really like the bold reds, and then against the bold red, singular, and then with the dark coal black, and then the whites horns. I like the aesthetic quite a bit. One of my favorite figures in this set, for certain. And if I had to choose like one favorite figure, I probably would choose him, but then there's multiple Omicron snipers available. Anyway, how viable is he? He is a massive number of points. He's worth 180. I do not think he should be worth quite that much by a decent long shot. Take away, now he does have stealth flying, but take away that one ability and just say the stealth flying, I would make him worth 90, maybe 100 points, because all his stats are completely middle of the road average. The 5 life, 3 attack, 3 defense, and he doesn't even have that great movement. He has 5 movement, which again is flying, so that helps mitigate it. But so that's very, very average. So that'd be like an 80 points hero, maybe 70 points if you're trying to get onto the better scale of things that came later. But then he has, the stealth flying, okay, let's add, some points onto that. But then you got the +1 attack, which is really, really good. Now, is it 100 points good-ish? No, I wouldn't say it's that good. It's pretty good, though. Pretty darn good. That can really hurt, especially with range guys. It's like right next to the Omicron sniper, so it's very opportune. that really will help. That's a really big booster. 180 point booster again? No, I wouldn't say so. If he now, I remember reading his biography where he was like took part in gladiator games. And he was like the last one standing after a few days. It's like 3 attack, 3 defense. You're the last one standing, really? If he was beefed up to 4 attack, 4 defense, 6 movement maybe even. Now again, I'm not super pedantic with like the points and all that, so there's people much better out there at analyzing this stuff than I. But I would say at 180, I was like, that seems kind of fair. Now that seems kind of fair, in my humble opinion. Now Tornak, we're gonna go with we're gonna go up here with B tier, solid B tier. Again, I like the orcs riding the dinosaur sort of thing, or prehistoric animals in this case, dinosaurs. Got the Grimneck in the first one, got the Tornak in this one, so continuing it, it's a raptor, I guess, because of the killer claw. This dude can have some pretty good, has pretty good movement, so you can change flanks if you need to. There's been many a Tornak battles where we've had to switch flanks or go across a different side of the battlefield to where you're needed because of the disengage as well, coupled with that 7 movement. So pretty good with that. I wouldn't really choose Tornak unless you're doing an orc army. By himself, kind of lackluster. There's better spend points like with Meadburg's. But still decently solid figure, I would say. Better than Grimneck, at least usually, because Grimneck's just so terrible against anything that's not, anything larger than a medium. It's so awful. Whereas Tornak is even better with the 3 attack. So anyway, but of course less life, but more defense as well. So solid figure, again, good aesthetics. I like the armored orc riding the raptor. So good solid design. I like that take. It could have been just boring orcs, but got a little bit of a creative flair there, and I'm always for that. So let's go with, speaking of creative flair, let's go with some snakes. I'm going to put them here. I'm going to put them maybe a little lower than Tornak. The Vanlock Vipers. So I will just make it known. My favorite general is Ular. I like the aesthetic. I've always been really intrigued by fantasy, writing and all that. Really like fantasy. And then we got the fantasy, kind of nature, foresty stuff, and I'm all for it. I would say, so there's a little bit of bias there, if you could read between the lines there. The Vanlock Vipers have the distinction of introducing a 0 defense to the game. Great distinction indeed. They are not that great in terms of meta or in terms of choosing them. Now, it really depends on the board. Again, I've mentioned before, boards really matter. So if your board has a lot of water, and when I say a lot of water, I don't mean like water here, interspersed. I mean like a wall of water, like 5-6 spaces long. It's going to take conventional figures who don't have flying a long time to get through that water. It could take them multiple rounds. Again, most boards probably wouldn't have this, but if it's at a good choke point or something, or in the path up to a glyph or something, these guys can make it there really fast and can make them extend that 40-point value pretty quickly. So again, not the best, I would say. You just kind of hope that they get a frenzy and they can maybe do a little bit more than have a single attack and then die, because they're freebies, right? If you have a poor attacking squad, like, well, at least I'll attack. If I have nothing else to attack, I'll attack a Vanlock Viper squad, because if I roll 1 attack die, I'm gonna kill them unless they have high advantage. So lackluster stats in that regard, but interesting nonetheless. Like the aesthetic. And then, speaking of aesthetic, Vanlock Warlord. I was putting him in the very high B tier, the king of the B tier, and then after like minutes, literally, of deliberation, I put him in the low A tier. So I'll keep him in the low A tier. I like the aesthetic. I like how, with Heroscape especially, you don't just have, a clone of what you've already done. You still change it up a little bit so that you can see, the resemblance, but it's different enough so that it, is its own entity. And that's the case with here. You see the Vanlock Vipers, there's a squad, and then the Vanlock Warlord isn't just a bigger Vanlock Viper, who's beefier. This guy, has a different body, he has different arms, he has armor on him now, his head looks different. It's just, you can tell that they're, you know, in the same faction, but there's, you know, variety and creativity there, which is what I like. In terms of his stats, a little pricey, I would say, for that, for those stats, but you're starting to get some decent stats here, right? You know, before we've been talking about a lot of heroes that have the 5 life, you know, the 3 attack, 3 defense, and then, you know, I guess 5 movement. This guy's got 6 life, so, you know, pretty decent life, above average life. Got 7 movement, so very fast. And if you're going through water, which again is not typically a lot of water in a line, but if you do, you can make quick work of that water. And then 3 defense, you know, average, a little bit large, but he has a little bit above average, I'd say, attack at 4. So he is going to be kind of nearer to the front lines typically. Unfortunately, he does kind of die quickly because of being near to the front lines. He's a pretty big target, at least in terms of tall. He's pretty skinny, but it says on his card he's a medium 6, but he's basically staring Deathwalker 7000 in the face. Deathwalker 7000 is a large 7. He's a medium 6. I would say he should be a medium 7, but you know, whatever. He's about 7 tiles tall. So yeah, there you go. And of course, you have the synergy with the other Vipers and with other army cards as well, depending on if you get some scouts in your side, like the Zedian guards. So, there's Malliddon's Prophecy. Hope you enjoyed it. I don't know if I'll do like a ranking between all of the waves or whatever, but a pretty decent start. It's not necessarily bombastic or explosive, but it's introducing new factions while flushing out, you know, the Orc one, so which we got in the Master set. So, interesting, good start, and yeah, if you enjoyed it, hopefully there'll be some videos, links up here that you can click on. And I hope you took, you know, enjoyment with it, enjoying Heroscape. Again, hopefully Renegade's going to be coming out with Heroscape within the next year or so. Hopefully it's good. And I will see you in the next one. Take care until